Hi. 1 second.
Hi.
I don't know if any else comes. Somehow it's fairly empty. The agenda.
Yeah, no, I think we have a few more Apollo people joining.
Okay, let me. Okay, this is also coming. Okay. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Shane. Back from the holidays or long time no see?
No, just been busy with a new job at Apollo. So yeah, a lot of overlapping meetings with this, unfortunately. So, but I'm able to attend this week.
Okay. Give it 2 more minutes.
Did you already add me to the agenda?
No, I'm on it.
Okay. You're also not added. Okay, then I will use.
I know.
Thanks. In
I
that
think
case,
nobody is.
thanks for adding me too. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. We start in 2 minutes. Okay. Get started. And I expect the other pull requests at some point will just appear. Just so we have the agendas in order. So we have two topics. One is a continuation on the discussions of last week about the field selection map syntax. And I also talked to Benji a bit about that for suggestions he has. And like I spent a whole lot of experimenting with the different things, but let's discuss that as we dive into that. So let's start, and let me remind you that by being here, participating in this meeting, we all agree to the GraphQL spec membership agreement, the participation guideline, the contribution guide, and the code of conduct. Also, these meetings are published to YouTube, and we are using AI tooling to do summaries. So if you're not agreeing to these, please disconnect. Otherwise, let's move on. Let's do a quick round of introductions. Let's do it in whatever order feels right, because we don't have the agenda yet. I'm Michael. I'm the host today.
Hi, I'm Pascal.
I'm Shane from Apollo. Martin, want to go next?
Barton, also from Apollo.
I'm Ducky from Apollo.
Awesome. I think that's all right. Or is Steven
Yes.
somewhere here?
It is,
Yeah.
but I did want to call out that Ducky did have an agenda item added to
So,
the agenda
Awesome.
topic on
yeah,
the
we are looking
31st.
at the wrong date. So,
Yeah.
I'm looking
Oh.
at the wrong.
Oh, yeah,
it's
this is the
August.
wrong week. Yeah, this is August.
It doesn't matter. We will be there as well. I was wondering, why is it so empty? Awesome. Very good. Okay, so talk about test framework. That's a very good topic. Let's start with that because the syntax discussions always take longer. So take it away. And I'm stopping.
okay. Okay. Let me share my screen. So I have a brief description in the
Hey,
issue.
Ducky, can you go ahead and just close Slack real quick?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah, because it's recorded.
Okay. So I've been using this test format. I came up with this mainly because I want to have all subgraph schemas in a single file, and I don't want to deal with multiple subgraph files in the directory. So I came up with this format as a single GraphQL file with a separator annotation. So I can have a subgraph annotation with some name, which is optional, and the subgraph schema and another separator, and here goes another subgraph schema. So I have a tooling that read this file and split these subgraphs into separate document objects and then compose them. I found it very useful. So I think I saw a the test suite with the directories with multiple subgraph files. So yeah, I thought it'd be nice to have this format used in this work group.
And what's the hint syntax here?
So it's just a suggestion. So it could be used as the tool can just read this annotation and check the underlying implementation does produce this hint.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So this is an example. One subgraph here, another subgraph here. And I found it useful to have a header. So this is a common header. So this part goes into all subgraph. So yeah, it works pretty well for me. So
Yes, I'll have, because it's funny because we talked about with the GraphQL Java guys, and they are also implementing at the moment the current spec proposal, and we decided to share with them tests. And let me find that quickly because Andy has put that somewhere in Slack.
Yeah.
Because we basically have a single file. We based it on YAML, right? But you have a single file format where you can describe what subgraphs are involved, but also you can formulate like interactions that should be part of this, and this way you can quickly build up tests and then share them between implementations, and you just have to essentially invest one time the work into doing this.
This is nice. Let me show you one more example where oh, 1 second. Sorry. Where's my here we go. So So I have a suite of tests here. The one aspect of, so I can just run this test and with Apollo composition and sorry, it has to build right now. So it shows error on the line. So when you have multiple errors, sorry, this one might be better. It shows error on IDE, exactly annotate on the line the error is. So I found it very useful. So the way I do is when I split these subgroups into multiple objects, I keep their line numbers. So I preserve their lines. So when the composition error comes in, all the line numbers match up with the input format. So that's another thing I wanted to note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
convenient.
because it's a single file, but it
Well, the
still has the
benefit of this format here is that you have the IntelliSense. I doubt that you get the language injector correctly in
In
your
YAML. Yeah.
yeah, and the YAML depends on the editor, right? Some editors can do that, like with Rider and stuff.
Well,
But
you still
yeah.
have the link to it, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bit there's a depends on what you actually want to do, right? Because if you if it's simply about composition, I think that format is okay. But if you also want to describe interactions that you want to have with this, it becomes
Yeah.
limiting, right?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think zooming out a little, like, do we want to like include a test suite with the spec? Like, do we want
Yes.
sort of?
I
So
mean, that was the original agreement we had, that we don't do a reference implementation, but we define a test suite.
Yeah. So then a common format would be really nice. And
Yes. But the question, like, let me quickly take let me quickly share what we do at the moment. Not that I say this is a good format, but also we need to find a way for also describe interactions, like what not necessarily what the query plan is. That this could be different between implementations, but you kind of have to describe how you compose the schema and how you interact with it. That's at the moment what we do with the Java guys. We share these tests. This is a simple one. We have a query, this one. We have here the subgraphs that are defined. We also defined the interactions that could happen from the gateway with here, and then the data that should be responded. So you can write quickly these tests, feed up, and then it does the complete test suite with that. This is useful if you want to cover quickly a lot of edge cases also. I don't know what we want to do for the actual test suite, right? But there must be some way we describe certain test cases and then also mount the underlying subgraphs. Either we write them once in a concrete language, and then you compose against that, and then you write against that really fixed tests in a language, or we come up with something like this.
Yep. So yeah, the Federation team, the Apollo Federation team has also something similar. Not YAML, but in Rust code, we have a very similar style of tests.
Yeah, it's. I'm also not concerned with the format, but we should have a format, something like that. So we chose YAML because it's easy to read, and if you put it in JSON, it's like it's like awful. But it would be nice if we can describe it
Yeah.
like this, because it
Mhm.
would make also contributing new tests easy if you don't have to code. So I'm pretty open to anything
Yeah.
that we can
Yeah.
do there. But
Yeah.
but your test files was meant for composition, or?
Yes, yeah, quickly compose.
But where can you show it again? Because where is the result that you expect? Where's your expectation?
So it mainly tests whether the composition was successful or not.
Okay.
It tests error conditions, I think, or is that the?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You inline your expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's successful, it would be just okay. No errors here. Or if there's an error, I want to know if there was an error. And I can quickly test, okay, if I remove this key, then there's no error. Errors
Okay.
here, but there's no error here. So yeah, it's mainly checking errors and hints. For hints, I have
Yes.
hints here. I can just quickly check it. And
Yeah,
each to create
yeah.
a new test.
We need to go, and it's actually a couple of tests, right? That we have. We have composition tests, something like this. This is success tests, right? Error test will be difficult, actually, if I think about it. If we don't have error codes or something like that.
Mhm.
I mean, we have error codes.
And execution tests.
Yeah, execution test is the what I showed is we do execution tests, right?
No,
That we
I mean
can.
it's the categories of
Yeah,
tests.
yeah.
Actually, I believe we only have two. I think we have execution tests where you specify a query and a schema and an output, and actually a query, schemas, and an output. And then there is the composition tests, and the composition tests should definitely include the outcome of the composition, not just the errors. I mean, this is great to find the error codes and so on, but for the specification, we also want to show what the composed public schema should look like, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, you're right. We don't want to capture the super graph, but we should have the expected public schema, because that should be the same. That must be the same across
Mhm.
implementations.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can add a new section
Yeah.
as you want. So I have an operation section. It compose and then execute this plan this operation like that. So you can add a new section of API schema
How do you
and response, something like that.
do you have a plugin for VS Code that this doesn't throw errors?
Which one throws error? This operation?
No, but because this is a schema file with a query, this should have a GraphQL validation error in there.
These subgraphs are valid, but yeah, I mean, as a whole, it will be invalid. But
Yeah, but that VS Code doesn't show you an error at the moment. Do you have a plugin for that, or?
No, so my plugin just doesn't throw error.
Okay. No.
Let me see. Maybe my configuration is not so strict.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a different. We use the foundation one in VS Code.
Okay, because if it doesn't throw an error and even gives you help,
I use Apollo GraphQL extension.
yeah, naturally.
Yeah, but I think it may not be configured with a schema, and then it doesn't validate. Is that maybe what's happened?
I guess so. It doesn't
Yeah.
really validate. Yeah.
One thing I worry a bit about this, specifically this format compared to the JSON, or I mean JSON is
JSON is
terrible.
terrible.
You don't have movement. Um,
Yeah.
The benefit of having YAML would be that everyone could easily parse the tests without writing a custom parser.
Right.
Because if we now would build this into our Fusion gateway, what we would have to do to verify that these tests are just because the tests shouldn't change, right? The tests are something which is cross implementation and we should be able to automate this in all of the implementation. So when there's a Rust composite schema server, .NET one, JavaScript one, and Go one, they can all use the same set of composition tests, which would be actually quite nice.
Could you post one of these into the Slack chat that we have?
And there is
It's already
definitely
in the issue as well. I could create
Yes.
a GitHub issue. I've
it's
posted
in
I
it.
think
195.
I think I'm super keen on this topic, right? Because that is that will be very important to people who implement that at some point and want to validate quickly. And we should establish that early on.
Yeah. I do like the inline hint and error expectations. Like regardless of sort of the container format we pick, like maybe that's something we can adopt because it's a comment, so it shouldn't result in any additional validation errors or
Yeah, that's why I asked with the plugin, right? Do you have a special plugin that gives you this kind of also when you ran the test, you got the hint in VS Code?
Yeah. Yeah, there's no plugin integration yet, but
yeah, I
we
mean
can
you
make
can,
one.
but yeah, but I mean with VS Code you can also, if in your console output you have a certain format of a line, then
Yes.
VS Code will pick that up as an error hint,
Yeah.
which is
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm using right now. Yeah.
yeah, that's the nice things. So yeah, I know Andy would be pretty keen on this because like the error format I showed, that comes actually from the test format for request I showed, that also came from him because he wanted to benefit from things we are already writing tests for in his implementation.
Maybe we can invite him to one of the next meetings.
Yeah, the problem with we would need to pick a different meeting time because he's in Sydney.
Oh, yeah, of course.
That's the
Yeah,
absolute.
that's why. Otherwise, he would be on every meeting. Like, I mean, but the graphical Java guys are all Atlassian, and they're all down in Bristol, in Brisbane. There. That's why I sometimes get up for him at 7, and then I brief him on stuff.
Yeah.
We talk then. Yeah, but that's super good. I think let's pick that up. Let's get some more people on that. I also will ping Steven. I don't know how Netflix actually tests their implementation internally. Would also be interesting if they have a similar format. Because I think I would guess that every implementation has a similar issue. Awesome. Okay, let's move on. Like with the syntax discussion that we did last week, so I went completely wild and explored a whole lot of things, also all of Martin's suggestions, and I also implemented them a bit, not fully in full breadth, but to see where the issues lie. That's also why I don't know if I discussed. Let me actually share. Then we can get more visuals on that. So we have a couple of these syntaxes tried out. Like for instance, this one, A is assigned A, right? Which translates to actually this selection set, right? And then also translates to an object where A will then be assigned with a concrete value that we resolve from A, which could be foo, right? And then we explored a bit further into other things like what happens actually if we have default values, constants in here. If you have things like fallbacks where you could say, if this doesn't exist, for instance, put in a string. This works for most things, but crashes where we have enums, for instance, where we say this is actually the enum value E. And this is a bit pity because like it would be so awesome to have that, but you also want to maybe say it's A or B.
Yeah.
In the end.
And I think with GraphQL, the way enum literals are used, they're always used in a context where the type is known. And they never mix, I think, with
no.
With fields.
Exactly. Like in GraphQL, you know, in this section, there is value syntax. And when there's value syntax in a section, like from the parsing perspective, then you don't expect that there could be fields. I mean, there could be fields in object values, but then it's clear on this side, this is a field. On this side, there could be a value syntax again. And that makes it safe. I talked a bit with Benji about that, and he said we should design or optimize for the common case and not get bogged down in the edge case that we have with the enum there. We could always come up with some weird syntax token or whatever to accommodate for the value syntax, right? We don't have to solve that actually for version 1. And we don't have to solve that if it means that we compromise on all the other parts.
Yeah.
So
would like a qualified enum, like always including the enum type and a dot, like would that be a
there are a couple of
it's still potentially ambiguous if you have a field like starting with an uppercase character, but it's getting increasingly unlikely.
I mean, this would be no, it still has a potential of collision because like I'm thinking from the syntax tree, right? You want to produce a valid syntax tree without needing type context.
But that's the thing, like most programming languages don't have that property. Like they do rely on like name resolution as an explicit step
Really?
to differentiate.
Like Java doesn't have that, for instance. Like you can pass it very ambiguously. You will not know. Okay, I will know what you mean. You will maybe not know if a certain type token there is, for instance, an enum. That's true.
Well, but you also you don't necessarily know if it's a field or a local variable or like those are all things that you will have to
but you
resolve
will,
in a separate.
Yeah, but you will know the literals, for instance. You will know it's a literal or it's a type reference. Like you will always know it's a string, it's a number.
Oh, you do for those literals, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what in GraphQL these are the literals, right? These are the value literals.
Yeah, but I don't think for enum values like
it's a enum value literal in GraphQL.
No, I know in GraphQL, but I think in other languages like similar constructs, I think you would need to disambiguate those based on like the naming context. Similar to how you
know.
because
could
it's basically treated as a member, I think.
be.
So
Yeah,
we need to.
You don't know. You don't know because it could be. I mean, just in C#, it could be namespace.type, or it could be enum value, enum.value. It
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
could be whatever. So
yes, that's true. Like why I think we still should solve that is because the rest of the syntax tree, like it perfectly aligns with everything in the GraphQL syntax tree until now, but this part somehow doesn't, right? So I haven't given up on solving this. Benji suggested, I think just for fun, he said we could always do something with an ugly token. I'm not there yet, but there are ways to, like, we have design space to solve this kind of thing. So that brought me also back to our original thing, and that is this guy here. Right? This was our original proposal, and we didn't know like why we designed it this way. And this is actually for simple one-offs, right? And I had to step really a bit back to get what we originally planned. So we have a query. On this query, we have, for instance, this thing product by ID, right, by ID. And this maybe has an ID here, but it maybe has also other things. So we could design that as explicit fields, but we also could design that, for instance, as a one-off, right, with these nice by pattern what is emerging. So you could say product by input here, and then we could have here an is on top of that. So this is different semantically from how the requires works. It has a lot of overlap and property, but is also different in the sense that what we have here doesn't select data. So when we do requires, this requires essentially is compiled into a selection set, and this selection set is basically injected somewhere. So the data that we require is selected somewhere. In the case of a lookup, this is not necessarily the case in that way. It's more like to use this lookup, you have to provide here either an ID, or you have to provide here an SKU, let's say, and then I can get you a product.
Can you include the type definition for product by input, like the one-off?
The one-off, yeah. And this would be ID. ID. And this would be SKU. And this is a one-off.
Yeah, and it's product by input.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
And let me GraphQL this.
So I think, I mean, if you go back a little bit and think about sort of what a literal input value would look like for this input,
yeah,
then
basically
you're specifying either that one or that one, right?
Yeah.
Because there is a difference between null and not including the field for inputs. There isn't for okay.
This is why we had this in the first place, and this is also very clean if you look at the lookup case. I don't say that the require case is in this case different from that, right? And here you have a decision between this or that, and then you would produce either this or this lookup.
But we do want to support one-off for require, I think, right?
Yeah, but I'm just saying that the case, like we discussed the case that actually we could have in the require case, you sometimes select fragments and stuff like that, right? What you do also with Apollo, and then you just inject it there. And from that case, it's a bit different in what we are talking about. Here you define essentially the keys that need to be injected, or the data that needs to be there to use this lookup. So it's either this or that. That's also the hint for the executor. So you don't have to provide everything, and you don't have to select all the data. Like what we discussed last week, I think. Let me maybe point that out. Is this guy here on the requires? If we had something like this, is it a book? Then I want the title. Title. No, sorry, not like this, like this.
Yeah.
And if it's, what was, I don't know, something else, some music. That's also the title, but let's say then it's the artist. Doesn't make sense, right? But in this case, if we think about how would we translate that for the executor? So what we, in the requires case, we would essentially create a selection set. And that would say on book. It's title. And on music, it's artist, right?
Yeah.
And then this would be the requirement. But here it's different, right? Here you look at, because like when you are in the planning mode, you're looking how you can transition to the other subgraph, and you make already the decision to select that or this. That's why it requires different. Because you know, because you're planning, for instance, you need to go from subgraph A to B. And subgraph A provides the ID. So you can transition with the ID. So you would not go and look for the SKU. You would just simply say, okay, I use this lookup because it allows to inject this as an entry point. And this is the difference between require and lookup from a planning perspective.
I'm not sure I get it.
Okay, let me go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, because what you're saying here is the product type, which is still yet not defined in this example, has a key of either the ID or the SKU, and they're both valid keys.
Yeah, let's say we.
This is the one lookup field. What if the spec says you can't have ambiguous lookup fields? You can only.
Why is it ambiguous?
Like, because you have you have an input with a one of, I guess, and it's not ambiguous in the sense of the human reading it, but like for the query parser, it's like
also not ambiguous.
No, it knows it's a one-off, right?
And you can think about this as this actually is two lookup in ones, right? You don't have
this is two lookups.
Yeah.
In the gateway, when I deal with these lookups, they are technically to the part they will be translated in the gateway, in the planner, or that's how we did it. We translate them to two lookups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But for users, it's very very nice to define them like that, right? Just define here, okay, this is my one-off, and I'm now saying this can provide these two key definitions. Like if we have that here in the, let's create quickly two subgraphs. One, and this is subgraph 2, and let's say subgraph 2 only has the ID, right? And query. Here we have products. Again, not a realistic example, but let's design it. And then in the product 2, we have, for instance, this guy here, right? That means I can, if I query now, this kind of a query, products, and then I want to get the title or the name or whatever, then I need to go to the other subgraph, and I have an ID. So the query planner looks at, okay, you have an ID. Okay, this lookup needs an ID. So we're going to pass this in.
Yeah. I get that, but like in terms of the syntax, I think that the thing we discussed last week was, or maybe it was after on Slack, but
yeah,
was sort of whether there's a need for the choice operator here, or whether you can actually rely on the semantics of one-off and sort of infer that only one of those fields will ever be present.
Yes. And I just said I re-evaluated why we did this, right? And I could, when we mainly discussed requires in last week's meeting. And I was also like, why did we design this? And this is actually for the one-off use case. And we designed first the lookups before we started with requires.
But why is it ambiguous if we follow? Like, for instance, if you take out the
yeah, because like now you see actually what you have. You see the objects that you can pass in here. It's this or this.
I mean, I agree it makes it more explicit, but from the query planner perspective, you can just as well infer those semantics from the fact that product by input is one-off, right?
I'm not arguing here about technical limitations, or the query planner is fine with both.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. Okay. I just want, so for the query planner, it doesn't matter.
Okay. So it's purely about the developer experience.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's purely about readability, actually.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's definitely important, but it's good to differentiate the two. Yeah.
Both things work out. Like we could design it like this, or we could, let me copy the whole thing, or we could say it will be this.
Yeah.
Right. Could also be this. And then we have to understand there's one-off here. Like from the readability, you have to now have this in your, you have to have this close. Otherwise, you don't know that this actually is a one-off.
So what I'm worried about with the choice operator is that it works for these simple cases, the mapping. But what if you have like a nested one-off, or you have type conditions in there? Then the mapping isn't one-to-one.
Yeah, so I agree with type conditions. There, with type conditions, we have things to decide still. But even with nested one-offs, this works very well, right? You have, in essence, if you had another choice here, complex key, right? This complex key might have another choice, because this is also a one-off in itself.
Yeah. But if you now compare that to like the flat syntax for a similar case, I'm not sure it's more readable.
Yeah, but you get the choices that you have. And here you don't know that there is a choice from the reading. Like for the readability, you don't see that there is any choice that is being made on this. Like from the readability, this looks like, okay, I have to provide these two information.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you have to know that it's a one-off.
Yes. And like as I said, I programmed into both of these approaches. Like we will get them work, both, no matter which we choose. It's more about, it should be easy to reason about these things. And the other thing is we also have to, like, we construct here, if we could construct here very complex deep nesting, but what are the average use cases? That's also what I talked to Benji about. He said, what is the average use case? If the average use case is deeply nested, then we have to design into that space. If the average use case, I'm talking about lookup there. There are differences, and that's also important that we reflect on that. And I did that over the last days. There's a difference between lookups and requires. I expect in requires we have a lot more nesting, and also type conditions and things like that.
But I do think we want a common syntax for both, right?
Yes, I agree.
So,
But-
so my question here would be, are we disallowing the second option then in this case? Like, are we requiring the choice operator for one-offs? Because otherwise you have two ways of doing the same thing, and I think that might actually get more confusing.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't make a choice of what we want to do.
Yeah, and then we require. So in the case of one-off, we would
Yes.
always
Require that. And yeah, and what we have to.
One second here. Just one thought. Like, this would also allow you to have more options in the one-off that you don't want to expose as a lookup.
How do you mean?
Just saying something stupid now. Product by input could have an internal ID, which is also a choice, but it's actually not mapped. You could also say product by input is only going to be used with ID, but never with SKU, because you don't want it to be exposed as a lookup for SKU. You just want it to be exposed as a lookup for ID.
But
Yes.
I don't think there's a difference between the two syntaxes in that respect, right?
Well,
yeah,
there
you
is-
would
okay, fair enough. You
would
could
omit it. You would.
Yeah.
I just omit the other case. In this case, it's still a one-off, but we tell the planner basically you can only use it with ID.
Yeah, true. Same.
So that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
in this
So
case
I
it
mean,
boils down to the same.
I agree that in this case, I think the choice operator does make it more explicit and it is more readable. I do think we'll have to work through the require cases.
Yes.
And I think that should also maybe help us decide between these two, because if we can't get things to work with like unambiguously with type conditions, for instance, or if that like overcomplicates the syntax, that could be another reason to go with one of the options.
Yes. Yes, it must be for me it must be easy to understand quickly what the context is, right? That would be ideal if we get something that's simple. And these cases is why we went for the first syntax, right? Back then when we started working on that. Is sometimes you come back to this and you lose most of the context that we discussed back then. And when I worked through this, I understood it again. Okay. So we are almost at the end. So, but for lookup, you're also this is actually good. Like for a lookup, this is actually good. Even with more complex keys, it's still very readable. The thing where this becomes complex, the whole case becomes complex. It's actually the requires. The question is, what is the use case in the requires case for a one-off?
I mean,
I'm not saying we don't want to support it. I just want to understand what we expect the user to use it for.
I think in the
Yeah.
requires case, it's only when you have a type condition, which that could be relevant. Because you always have, like, you need a type condition, because otherwise it's always going to be one choice of the one-off.
Yeah, but I was very much on board of Martin's thought about this. And like when we have here, for instance, complex some object, let's say input, and this is details. Like we want to calculate here the delivery standard example. We get some product details about size, weight, and stuff like that. And if we have here the directive, the require, then even if that is a complex requirement where we want to have type conditions and stuff like that, like the ideal thing is that you translate it into a selection set. So we have typically maybe we go here in dimensions, and then maybe there are special treatment, special properties on whatever. Okay, and then we go. Let me break that quickly. It's always hard to come up with.
Why doesn't the user just write the full selection set syntax? Like the full GraphQL dot
Because
on.
yeah, because you need to get it into an input object. And this transformation might, this for instance, a pull up, right? It has deep nesting in the selection set, but you actually want to get it onto a single object, and this is it. This is the transformation. Thanks. Wait, thanks. Whatever. Right? Now you have a simple input here.
Right.
That has just these two. It could be deeply nested. Especially if you design the requirements as objects, you want to be in control of how they are projected essentially, and that's what the syntax gives us.
Yep. Right. Okay.
Michael,
But in the
how far along are fragment aliases?
yeah, but this I'm not far enough that I would bet on that. I think they will come, but we have fragment arguments, not fragment aliases yet. I can't talk to Matt. I don't. He was champion on that.
Yeah, I think there's two problems there because the pull-ups is something which wouldn't even be supported with the fragment aliases. You would also need the dot syntax in GraphQL. So
Yeah,
it's
but this is, Pascal, this is not a problem. Like this would work. The thing where I think Martin and I have concerns is the choice that you do, especially if you have two of these objects with different generics, with different type conditions. In that case, it becomes complex. Because how do you make the choice between that? Because and that's a that's a fundamental difference in planning between the lookup, where you make up your mind first, and then this select the lookup to do. So you already made the decision on the data. Whereas in the requires case, you in this case have dimension, and then we go here and have a fragment where we say this is foo. Sorry. Yeah, there. This is a fragment. So we select all the data. And now the choice would be done on the data we received. That's fundamentally different.
And I think one of the reasons is that type conditions may be overlapping. So they're not necessarily object types. Like there could be abstract types, and there could be overlap in there. So that makes the choice more difficult. I think that was one of the things we discussed last week.
Yeah.
There isn't necessarily a
And why did the just filling in, and if the type condition doesn't match, skip the case not work?
I think that would work. I think that was my proposal, to sort of evaluate the selection set, and similar to normal GraphQL execution, like if a type condition doesn't match, that field isn't included in the response, so it's not null. It's actually not included, and then you, in the case of a one-off, have to match that against the semantics of the input object. So only one of the fields can actually be top level fields can actually be provided.
Yeah, and we were there, right? But it's like syntactically, you can do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you can say that these go to the same field.
Yeah,
You can also
and
just
and
pipe them to the same field, and that's
Yeah, that's not something GraphQL would support. Like there's a strict validation.
no, it does. It kind of does, right? Because this is in the input. It's again the same topic, right? GraphQL supports it because what GraphQL supports is the right side of the colon. So that's the GraphQL selection set syntax. The left
this, you
side
mean?
is the input. So
Well, I mean, if you consider those aliases, then
no. The left side is the input object. It's the input structure. The right side is the selection set structure. And this
Yeah,
you define the mapping between the two. So even if you like add a pipe there, from a graphical perspective, everything is fine because you have the same selection set that you would have in the on line 35. You also have on the 38. Nothing changes. The same selection set. The only thing that changes is the mapping between the selection set and the shape of the input object. That's what changes. But from a graphical point of view, it's the same thing. Like the selection set is equal. There is nothing that will change, right?
yeah. What you have here, like if X and Z are interfaces, then and we need a type choice, then it's not a simple take the type name, right? It's take the type name, evaluate if it's assignable.
yeah.
Same goes for the others, right? There also
And
needs
if you do consider this a normal GraphQL selection set, like the validation would make sure that like the two weight fields, for instance, have the same type.
yeah, they must be mergeable. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's also something that we most likely are going to have. Like that's most likely a must because otherwise the planning gets really, really complicated because you would have to alias essentially everything. It's possible. You could alias all the fields. That's possible.
Oh no, let's not go there.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
I would just simply say the GraphQL merging algorithm applies here.
Well, on the other
merging.
hand, it's only one place where you have to implement it, right? And you have a field number and you access it. It's implementation detail how you're going to implement this. We just need to decide which direction you want to go. I think the main question I have is like when you start evaluating any of these shapes, then just start from the left and try to go from the bottom up and build the object. If you find a type condition that doesn't match with the object that you receive, and there is no pipe behind this type condition, then you know that this choice is unviable.
Yeah, but one more thing into that. That is a feasible algorithm. But there is something here. Like if in this case we just have the single object here, right?
Yes.
If it's not foo, then this is null, right?
No, this is gone. This type condition. This type
This
condition
is gone.
valid. Yeah, you have to if you want foo or bar, you have to pipe it. You found the type condition.
No. What I'm just this doesn't exist. Just this is our requirement. If it's not foo,
Yes.
then we just take this out, right?
No.
Yeah.
I would say runtime exception.
No. Why, Pascal?
Because it's similar to this, like on a selection set, you also would just not include weight in the response, right?
Yeah, but for me, for that's why I say you start evaluating. Because if you want this behavior, what you can do is you can write W :
Yeah.
first thing, then colon, then
Yeah.
pipe the other thing. Then you
I
have
think the runtime exception doesn't come from the selection set, but it may come from the input
the
object,
input.
because you
Which
still
is
need to you need to validate the value against the type.
Yes, I agree with that, but if
So
it's,
in
it's
the case of
nullable,
one-off, yeah,
yeah, I mean, if the input has either a default or if it is nullable, it's
Yeah.
just then we could just and we don't have to check for the default. We just inject it as this, and then it would
Well, for me-
evaluate against the input.
In my head, the algorithm would say this choice is invalid.
Then we would like first off, like if you look at Apollo, they just have a field selection map where you just define this.
Yes.
The data would be gathered and injected.
Yeah, I know.
So this would be completely at odds with that behavior.
I'm not sure.
It wouldn't. It would in this case not. There would be no exception.
Yes, that's one of the problems that that it has, that it's just working on arbitrary object structures.
Yeah, but even I mean, Pascal, why should this? This would be totally as a developer. I would totally not expect that there is an exception.
Well, just, I mean, copy this quickly.
Yeah.
The dimension on line 38. Now put the W in front of it instead of the L.
What's a W? Yeah.
Yeah, W, and then you have foo, dimensions foo. Now you pipe it to the one.
Yeah,
on
but
line.
it could be on some objects that I have this. On others, I don't have that. This is an interface. Sometimes it matches.
Yes.
Yeah, but I would end up with millions of pipes.
But why would you?
I would expect this just to be removed, and if that is still
Yeah.
a valid object, it injects it.
that makes a lot more sense to me as well.
Otherwise, it becomes unmaintainable. Then we have to write a satisfiability just on the syntax.
Well, I'm not sure. Because, like, if you have a condition like this where you want to set the value, like, what's your expectation? Like, you have a type condition in there, right?
Well, but the expectation is that if something is a foo, I want its length.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's like in .NET. Just to translate that, it's like an S. If this type is this, then give me the value. Otherwise, make it null.
Yeah, but that's,
In this case,
hold
take
on a
it
second,
take
hold on a
it take it out. Take it
Hold on
out.
a second. .NET works exactly how I described it, not how this is. Because if you have two type conditions in .NET, it will match both of them.
No, but this is per field, Pascal. I see that per field.
I do need to drop,
Yeah.
but let's continue this next week, okay?
Okay. But it's this. This is a problem we have to solve. The other I think is okay. Okay, got it.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Right.